Thank you so much, Bishop Lusa, for your time today. We had a brief chat a while ago about the Manosphere and particularly how it relates to football, which is something that I'm involved in as chaplain of the football club. So yeah, I thought I'd ask you a few questions really about yeah, how you sort of see this kind of whole area and search for identity and meaning and community, particularly in young men online.
Mhm.
Why do you think that there is this attraction to, the manosphere? I know it's a spectrum of subjects, but I just wondered why do you think there is this attraction?
I think you started to articulate that well when you talk about the quest for meaning, for purpose, for a sense of mission, a sense of direction. I think in a world where we've been reduced to just commodity and just clogs in a particularly well-oiled machine, there's a sense in which we lose a sense of personhood. We lose a sense of multiplicity of dimension in who we are,
Mm,
and there are kind of reductive stories into a sense of who we are, and we see that manifested in some of the extreme politics that often crystallize around very defined sense of who we are, creating deep fractures, deep chasms between us and the other is often perceived as a threat, as a danger to who I am, and therefore, in order to manifest the fullness of who I am, I need to somehow conquer, to dominate, to colonize the other.
mm,
And if that makes me feel good and purposeful about myself, the better that is. And it seems to me that we've been wrapped up and caught up into a destructive story of who we are, a divisive story of who we are. And I wonder whether the longing is to be part of a bigger story of connection, of belonging, where we find a place where we are named and
mm,
claimed. But sadly, I think what the Manosphere does is that it taps into a real hunger. Uh, and names the disease accurately, but fails to prescribe the right remedy for it.
mm. Yeah, that's really helpful. So there's something about the stories that we tell about
Mm,
reducing things down to quite polarized positions.
yes.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I wonder, do you think that there is something that the manosphere is sort of trying to tap into that's true? Where is the truth or the grain of truth in the whole sort of
Mhm.
manosphere discussion, particularly for men?
Well, I think that there's that very sense in which, as human beings, we are gregarious and therefore are called to places of connections and belonging. And the paradox of the manosphere is that it kind of elevates the lone wolf and the
Mm,
self-made man in contradiction with that longing for connection, for belonging. So in many ways, there is something uh, profound in articulating that. There is something also about helping people find meaning and purpose. And there's a sense in which I think the discourse that we see emerging into those spheres and those spaces give a sense of purpose in life, give a sense of meaning,
mm,
and give a drive that many of us are often unable to manufacture or develop from our own stories and our
mm,
own locations. So there
mm,
is something really crucial
mm,
in that, and I wonder whether there is something about the manosphere that we often talk about purpose, but purpose that is found not just in being but in the doing. So
mm,
there's the performative aspect
mm,
to that, which I think is part of the longing for many of us, and
mm,
particularly in a world where we tend to be commodified and objectified. We want to extract ourselves out of that because we believe that there's something more precious about who we are. We have the intuition that there is something deeper than simply being a number into a system,
mm,
being a plug into a machine.
mm.
And I wonder whether there is something that we need to pay attention to in what many of the voices shaping the space and the sphere are involved in.
So the instinct is right that we are longing for meaning and purpose that's both in being and doing, to find our place in this world, to be productive, to be creative. But what happens is it gets slightly distorted by stories that are polarizing. And instead of turning those sort of feelings and those instincts into something that's really productive, that's good for society and community, it distorts and becomes damaging. Is that kind of,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes,
okay.
I think that there's a hijacking
Hijacking, I love
of the
that.
Matrix
Yeah,
in
yeah,
many
yeah,
ways, a hijacking of it that becomes counterproductive in many ways,
yeah.
uh, and there is again the temptation is to suggest to people that you are a person in your own right,
Mm,
you have value, you have purpose, and yet there's a sense in which it's simply an enlisting
mm,
as fodder, a
yeah.
cannon fodder for a system that is not designed really to elevate and give them dignity, but
Mm,
simply to abuse and exploit them
mm,
into a wholly transactional way of living,
yeah.
and where young lives, young minds become in many ways a means for fame, a means
Mm,
for wealth, a means for power. And while I would not want to assume the intentions and judge the intentions of those involved in it, but there really is a sense in which we are exploiting these young lives and
mm,
these young minds.
mm,
And it's not dissimilar to what we've seen in parts of the world in conflict, where young boys would be enlisted in rebel or military groups to fight a cause that is often not their own, but
mm,
they are caught up into a story that really they're not agent of,
mm,
and they are sold a lie that gives them the illusion of purpose, the illusion of belonging, the illusion of life and flourishing. But ultimately, they're simply foot soldiers to individuals whose aspirations aren't
mm,
necessarily their flourishing.
mm. Thank you. I wonder if I wonder how you think Jesus might speak into this whole sort of subject. Um, we don't find I don't know whether you can, if there's some sort of teachings from the of Jesus that you think particularly resonate for us,
Hmm.
and how as Christians we respond and speak into this, as you say, not dismissing it, and but actually trying to help our young people work out their place in the world in a way that just leads to them flourishing.
Yes. Well, I think the life of Christ speaks powerfully into this. And what I would probably want to suggest is that Jesus does not only speak to men or to masculinity in
Mm,
its toxic expression, but Jesus speaks to all of us, to a society that tends to define itself along fractures, that creates hierarchies of worth, that creates systems that exploit and flourish based on the abuse and the exploitation and the marginalization of others. And so I think for me, it starts with the first movement of Jesus's ministry, his baptism,
mm,
where we hear Jesus being named and called and named as a son. And so that speaks into the longing for belonging.
yeah.
So you are my beloved son.
Mm,
And it is not a self sufficient definition of who I am, but it is the interruption of my own delusion by an
mm,
external voice, the voice of the Father who
mm,
claims me as
mm,
his. And I think for us as Christian, that's the first movement in our
mm,
response towards these narratives
mm,
that are toxic in so many ways. So one, we are claimed, we are connected, we are called into a place of belonging. And there's a sense also in which Jesus invites us into a place in which worth is not defined through performative anxiety. So he gathers a motley crew of individuals whose lives, in many ways, might be perceived as failures in so many
Mm.
lenses through so many categories, and yet teaches them to find intrinsic worth in who they are, affirms them, equips them, and enables them to go out and try out something of the inner worth that they've got in them. Jesus does that in a way in which power is not seen as something to grab hold on to, but something that is best manifested when it is distributed, when
Mm.
it is let go of and released. And there's something beautiful about the tenderness
Mm.
that Jesus showcased, not just to women, not just to the marginal, but to all.
Mm.
We see Jesus embracing children and blessing them. We see him crying at the tomb of his friend Lazarus. We see him lamenting and mourning for the fate of the city that he loves, Jerusalem. Uh, I was recently reflecting on his encounter with Peter after Peter had betrayed him. The encounter is not in a court where Jesus
Mm.
is confronting Peter's failures, but it is by the shore of a lake, besides a fire smoldered in smoke, with the beautiful scent of barbecued fish.
Mm.
And in that moment of intimacy, and I believe of tenderness, um, somehow Peter is restored in his humanity, restored in his masculinity. And what strikes me is that the language that Jesus used is not how are you going to reassess your strength and your worth? How are you going to amend from your mishap? But it's the language of love that he uses. Do
Mm.
you love me? And a place of tenderness, a place of intimacy, a place of depth. And I wonder whether there is something that the manosphere is missing out when it only try to speak to the callous bit of who we are, to the
Mm.
hardened bit of who we are, failing therefore to touch the deep heart of our longing, the
Mm.
deep cry of our lives, and then simply drawing us into an illusory story of what it means to be a competent and confident human life.
Yeah. Your response was much better than mine. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the um, Jesus analogy of the good tree and good fruit,
Mm,
and the idea that if we kind of if our identity is in the right place and our foundations are firm in terms of who we are and how we see ourselves, then good fruit comes from that in terms of the kind of output of our lives, and that there needs to be some ordering to that in terms of our identity comes first, and ensuring that those firm foundations help us to then see the world and interact with the world in a helpful way.
I, I I think that's part of of the story. That's part of the picture.
Yeah.
There is, I think, when you talk about rootedness, there is something about allocatedness in life, and I wonder whether actually a lot of us are lost. A
Mm.
lot of us are wandering through life without a real point of articulation and orientation, and we are kind of feeling our way through the darkness,
Mm.
and be seduced by the sirens calling us
Yeah.
into spaces that we think might be life, but actually they create a sense of inadequacy, because
Mm.
constantly what the manosphere tells us is that unless you achieve this social status, then you're not quite the man you ought to be.
Mm.
Unless you are able to be feared by others, you're not quite the man that you want to be. And
Mm.
unless your masculinity is felt by others, you're not quite the man you want to be.
Mm.
And so we then find ourselves rooted or located into places that really can't give us life. And there's this beautiful image in the Psalms that speaks of the blessedness of the one who is planted by the streams of water.
Mm.
And I wonder whether part of the challenge for us in our society is that we are called further away from the streams of water, and we find ourselves in arid places where the reality is scarcity.
Mm.
And it does not surprise me that we then enter in competition with one another, and because that space is framed and built around fracture, fragmentation, and difference, and creating that hierarchy of worth. So whoever is not as close to who I am, both in culture, in gender, in socioeconomic status, and so on, is seen as a threat to the meager resources that are there for us
Mm.
to share, and therefore we start treating them
Yeah.
as the enemy, as an
Yeah.
adversary, to be dominated
Mm.
and colonized. And actually, Christ calls us to root ourselves into those places
Mm.
where the living is easy in some ways. Easy not
Mm.
because everything turns out how we dream it to be, but it's easy because we are connected to that life-giving network of life
Mm.
through the water. And I was reading something about trees and plants where there's I can't remember, is it a network really, a web that connects all the
Mm.
trees, and they feed each other, even giving each other resource for life,
Mm.
and that's the kind of living that we as humans are called to be, and
Mm.
particularly we as Christians are called to be rooted in Christ, and the fruit of it, therefore, is not self-serving. The fruit of it is not self affirmation, but it is enabling the flourishing, the blossoming of a
Mm.
rich ecosystem where the other gives me life and I give them life, where the other becomes someone that I can name as a neighbor, or in whose presence I can be
Mm.
named as a neighbor. I can be interrupted in my self-deluded narratives,
Mm.
and given a chance to belong, a chance to connect,
Yeah.
a chance to be named, really.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're right. Like, there's so much about the manosphere that just leads towards isolation,
Yeah.
and like a kind of scarcity mindset. It's almost like sort of a Hunger Games meets the manosphere situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wondered if I can ask you, because you talked a bit about masculinity. I wonder what sort of what's a message about being a man that you perhaps have absorbed growing up that you might have had to learn, unlearn,
Mm,
or wrestle with, and just how does that relate to you as a father, and how you're raising your kids
mm,
with an awareness about how to interact with this.
That's such a pertinent question. I think all of us live in a world where, whether at home or in wider society, there are particular assumptions made about what it means to be a man. I think for me, some of the things that I had to unlearn were around status and worth that was rooted and quoted in my sense of achievement in
Hmm.
society. So, am I earning enough to give
Mm.
myself the power
Mm.
to spread my wings and spread my shoulders and remind others that I am a person of worth and value. And in fact, the manosphere talks a lot about men of worth, and that worth is often framed in economic capital more
Mm.
than anything. And so I think part of what I had to unlearn was to find value not in what I had, but in who I was,
Hmm.
and therefore not simply look at life as a transactional space where
Mm.
the other is simply a means through
Mm.
uh, whom I can achieve my goal, and therefore I exploit them until I've drained all I can drain from
Mm.
them, and then I
Mm.
move on to the next one. And it is then trying to build deep and real, meaningful relationship with those that I encounter. but also recognize that actually there will be periods in my life where I will earn more, and there will be periods in my life where I will earn less.
Mm,
But my value should not be determined by how
mm,
much I earn, and therefore I should not project that a sense of inadequacy onto
mm,
others as well, and be able to give dignity to the
mm,
indigent in the same way as I would give dignity to the powerful and wealthy.
mm.
So that was what one unlearning I think that I had
Yeah.
to go through. The other one I think is the gift of tenderness that I had to learn. I think that there is a sense in which we are taught right from a young age, you're a boy, you shouldn't cry,
Mm,
and I think I had learned to live life without shedding tears, and I think still now.
mm,
Um, I don't shed tears easily, although I realize that the older I get, the more tender I become,
mm,
and the easier I am moved by by things
mm.
that I witness, and that sometimes doesn't don't quite make sense, but they just move me
Yeah.
in a way that touch me deep to the core of who I am. But then the I think the risk of then not being connected with that tender bit of ourselves is that we then live a life that is exclusively performance.
Mm,
So we stand on stages where we are unable to name the pains we carry. We
mm,
are unable to share the
mm,
burdens we carry, and so many of us then go through life really in agony. But we need
mm,
to be in that performative space. So be athletic, be confident about who we are in our own skin, be unmoved
mm,
by the brutality of the world that surrounds us, be unmoved even by the assault to our own dignity. And
mm,
actually, the only response that we're taught is violence, is domination, and so. I was saying earlier that I've learned to try and move away from transactional
mm,
dynamics, but there's also the hardened heart space leads us into confrontational dynamics. So every encounter potentially becomes a confrontation. So where I need to be the alpha
mm,
and exert my domination, and actually it is tiring. It is
mm.
exhausting to live life like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I see Jesus actually, who went through a series of confrontation. But I don't think at any point the confrontations that Jesus was involved in, at least his posture was never to try uh, and humiliate the other,
Mm,
or denigrate them, or
mm,
empty them of substance and dignity, but it always pointed to a different way of being,
mm,
to a fuller way of being. And I think there is an opportunity for us as a church to curate spaces where we teach ourselves and each other to
mm,
move beyond the transactional dynamic, and to recognize that our value is intrinsically rooted in God's claim on us.
mm,
And I was talking about baptism earlier. And I've always loved that affirmation of Jesus that
mm.
happened at his baptism, but also just before he turns his face towards Jerusalem at not the ascension, I forgot now, the what is
Transfiguration?
it?
No.
Transfiguration. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm getting my theological metaphors mixed up.
All right.
So again, that the same affirmation, and the idea was that when it was first heard, Jesus had not yet accomplished anything. And so his worth was not built in performance, but
Mm,
simply in the claim that God was making on Jesus. And then before Jesus moved towards Jerusalem, where he was going to be confronted with the toughest challenge of his life,
mm,
there is again that reminder, that affirmation,
mm.
you are mine, I've claimed you.
Yeah.
And actually, I will be with you through this
Mm,
the trial of your life.
mm,
And I'm not expecting you to enter this chapter of your life
mm,
uh, with performative anxiety,
mm.
but simply out of the knowledge of who you are in me.
Yeah. Thank you. And can you just to finish with, could you just speak to perhaps how you perhaps speak to your children about this and how we can
Mm,
talk to our yeah our youth about this. There's such a pressure on image and finding the right job and who you're partnered
yeah.
with and what success means, and it is all quite superficial, but it means a lot, to young people when they receive all of these these sort of impressions. How do you speak to your children about this, Lisa?
Yes. Well, that's a challenge in itself because I realize that I'm not the only voice that speaks into their lives.
Mm.
And increasingly, I probably think that I'm no longer the most important voice that speaks into their life.
Yeah.
And so our eldest daughter is 14. I've got a son who will soon be 12, and then our youngest who's 7, going on 17.
Mm.
And each of them are precious in their own way. I think for me, uh, I became acutely aware of some of the toxic masculinity element in my own upbringing and in society more widely when I became father to daughters.
Mm.
There was a sense in which I realized that they entered the world uh, from a very different vantage point than mine.
Mm.
Of course, I was aware of some of the complexity of being a black man into a white world, but I hadn't always captured some of the nuances of the complexity of sexism and misogyny, and recognizing that actually from a very young age, there's a way in which we socialize them, and we are socialized into creating a hierarchy of worth, and where women can so easily be commodified and objectified. And I think there's a bit of me that feels hyper protective. So I
Mm.
want to shield my daughters from some of the violence of the world.
Mm.
And so part of and I recognize that actually there's very little I can do to prevent that.
Mm.
But what I can do is to speak into them real sense of worth. And I
Mm.
do that not only for my daughters, but I try to do that for my son as well.
Mm.
And so it is the way in which we face failure. And so my own
Mm.
failures and their failures, the capacity to come before them and say,
Mm.
actually, I got this one wrong,
Yeah.
but also the capacity to sit with them in an intimate moment and just say, look, I didn't really appreciate what you did there, and this
Mm.
is why I didn't like it, and this is what it does to me,
Mm.
and this is what it does to you as well.
Mm.
And actually, you don't have to behave in this way
Mm.
because who you are is a lot more than
Mm.
that. And I think it is also trying to help them to not just hear this as as Lusa's philosophy of life,
Yeah.
but hear it as God's invitation for them
Mm.
as the journey through life, to get them to understand that I, like them, stand in those waters of baptism and have my name called in
Mm.
the same move as their name is called. So we are virtually standing, facing in the same direction and journeying in the same way.
Mm.
And part of what I also commit to do is not just try to create a safe space domestically, because actually they spend most of their time outside, or most of their awake time
Mm.
outside of home. And I am not there to
Yeah.
shield them and protect them. And so part of what I want to do is also to actively invest myself in society in ways in which I can to challenge some of the ways in which we create and curate spaces that are exploitative, that are abusive,
Yeah.
that rob others of dignity, whether it is through gender or ethnicity or
Mm.
other protected or non-protected
Mm.
categories. And it is also about remembering that I am part of a body that is the
Yeah.
church, part of an institution that has got a responsibility to speak into these societal
Yeah.
issues. And so I want, whenever I have the opportunity to speak into these in a way that does not just create a deeper polarity between the contending narratives, but a space that invites people to have their stories heard. Because I think many of us, particularly in the manosphere, we are called to live a particular version of our story, or rather to perform a particular version of our story. But
Mm,
I wonder whether part of our call as a church is to help people become storytellers of a different
yeah.
expression, but also to enter into a space where we live a better version of our
Mm,
individual and collective stories. Those are some of the things that
mm.
I try uh, to work on, failing most of the time, but still committing
Yeah.
to this ideal that
Yeah.
speaks of lives that are quoted in the love of God,
Mm,
of lives that are claimed by God,
mm,
but also of lives that are entrusted to transform the unjust systems and structures,
mm,
not in a way that discards, but that
mm,
invites and draws into a beautiful fellowship of the unlikely.
mm. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. I'm just aware of the time, but some of the things that you've said that I think are hugely helpful are about the importance of vulnerability and being
Hmm.
able to access sort of the tender parts of you,
Yeah.
and those moments of being, as well as
Yeah.
doing, and sort of
Yeah.
moving away from finding your identity in performance and performative spaces, but also about telling different stories.
Hmm.
And there's a word that cropped up a few times, which was particularly for a man about creating safe spaces. And you probably underestimate, Bishop Lusa, just how important that is for women to hear as
Hmm.
well, about the
Hmm.
importance of men creating safe spaces for women. So I just wanted to thank you. It's been really rich and I've really loved it. And I'm excited to share this with the church family, and I think they're going to find this really helpful. So I'm going to just stop the record button and so that I can thank you as well.